Hey, this is Ben here, and this project is called the OpenDB project, for want of a better title. Don't know what we're going to end up calling it because actually looks like the database could have warehouse other stuff as well. So maybe it's just open crime data, something. Well, let's find out. But for one, I want to build a basic kind of data warehouse. And in that data warehouse, I want to be putting, some kind of user access control. So users permissions, structure. So we've got subscribers, contributors, moderators, and people can pretty much use it a bit like a wiki. They can just throw an article and say, hey, look at this. And then it will go in a queue and somebody will have a look at it. So there's a couple of things that we need to do. We need to build a basic, data model, and we need to get that into sort of like a Laravel structure. That's what we're going to do initially. And going from there, the basic warehouse needs to then extend and start working on permissions and structure of sort of workflows. So how does the data get in and how does it get put together? So there's this document here. And what I've been doing is putting together a data model. So that's over here. So, and if I click there, it just opens up this document, which I'm going to drag in. There we go. And the idea here is that we just come up with a data structure. So I'm not quite sure about, quite which ACL, access control layer, we're going to use. But users permission, user groups, so that we can group people into, trusted people and not so trusted people and so on. And give moderators permission to allow things through and that sort of thing. And I've started listing what tables we need, but more than that, I've actually started writing out what the database tables are going to be. So I'm going to jump into that straight away. So I'm calling these things incidents because they're not necessarily a crime with a conviction and all that sort of stuff. So I'm just saying a thing happened on a day, and this data that I got from DBAA a long time ago, 2018, I think I got this. Yeah, there we go. So, woman rams husband in car, Crowdy Head. So it's got a location, it's got, attempted murder, it's got a bunch of stuff in there. So trying to think of, it's not a crime. She's going to get let off. It's not a crime. It's not, can't report her as being a criminal. So here we go. Let's just call it an incident. An incident report, obviously it's got an ID, primary key, and then we've got the date. The question is it confirmed or not? Do we know that date is definitely when it happened, the time? And maybe these things end up being like, we just don't know what they are, right? So they just end up being like, we just don't know. So a lot of these things can be unknown, which is what the null column is about. Yeah, so that's what that's about. So location, yeah, what's the name of the location? And is that location really confirmed? Well, that one said Crowdy Head. So we look up Crowdy Head, say, okay, where is it in Crowdy Head? Is it just general? Yeah, and a moderator would do that, pick it on the Google map, and we get the Latin long and save that. And maybe we would actually have a hierarchy of places, but we'll probably do that later on, phase 2, phase 3. The country, yeah, we're going to pick, in this case, it would be Australia, but that actually comes from a database table, because what we're going to do is maybe give some options to some other people to run this in other countries. USA, UK are the obvious too, because the same issues going on over there as well. Then we've got a summary, which is just a bit of text, and that would be pretty much what we've got written here. Maybe not the let off on good behavior, but there's the summary. And then a description. I don't know if we're going to use this, but that can be blank anyway. So yeah. Then we've got tags. So a many-to-many structure. And that would actually be linking to this table over here, the tags table. And then we'd have like, is it stabbing? Well, that one is vehicle, wife attacks husband, maybe that's a tag, but we'd work out later on what the actual tags need to be, but it's a many-to-many relationship, and that's the important factor there. Now, who is it and who's done the thing, the perpetrator and the victim? Well, we've then got joining tables, because it might be more than one victim. So it can't just be one-to-many or one-to-one. What we need to do is actually have the victim here as many-to-many, I think. Maybe not. Maybe it is just one-to-many. But if the victim is involved in multiple incidents, many-to-many is actually a lot better. So that's why I chose many-to-many. And the same with the perpetrators. So if it's the same perpetrator doing things over and over again, we really do want to identify that, and especially if they've got multiple victims. So that's why these two are many-to-many. So, you know, joining tables are just the incident ID from this table, joining with the perpetrator ID, which we'll get to in a moment, and the victim ID. So, you know, if you're not au fait with database architecture, yeah, so be it. But yeah, many-to-many is just a good way to go. And certainly the tags, you know, you could have any tag basically joined onto the thing, and this is what the many-to-many table allows to happen. The articles themselves, the idea is that when an article is added, maybe we don't know which incident it's about, or it adds a new incident. And then if a moderator picks it up and says, well, actually, that looks just like, or even the person, ideally the person adding it themselves, if they start adding a news article about this event, woman rams car, you know, thing, well, that we've actually got multiple articles already there. And if somebody pastes the same URL in a second time, the system just says, hey, we've already got that one. You know, we're not even going to make a new article record. Or, oh, this one looks like, you know, 4th of January, Crowdy Head. Is it this one? And ask them to then clean up their data input and not make a second incident on the same time. Now, if they do make a second incident, then there'll be a deduplication function. So a moderator can come along and just say, yeah, this new incident is the same as that one, so get rid of it, you know? And that's pretty straightforward stuff. That'll actually have to go in here of, I'll just make a quick note and put it in the right spot. Articles, yep. Okay, that's not spelled right, but I'll fix it. Victims. So yeah, so the article itself, like maybe we'll scrape the content because sometimes news sites change the article or whatever, and that might be quite useful. And maybe a later generation is that we'll keep an eye on the text of the article and we'll see whether they change it, because yeah, they do. Anyway, it could be a quite interesting project in itself. And then victims. So we've got the name of the victim. Yeah, maybe we don't know that. So it could be null. We've got the gender of the victim. Yeah, it could be null. You know, and maybe it's just basically an empty record of there was a record. And yeah, we got harmed, you know, or physically harmed, maybe. I don't, I'm going to talk to a lawyer friend about this and just see what he thinks. Whether they had physical harm or whether they were killed or whatever. What happened to them. You know, if, I don't know whether these need to be null or not, but yeah, if we know there's like one victim, we can add the incident. There's got to be at least one victim when we add an incident. And then we find out later on there's a second victim, well, you can just add it. It's fine. And the age confirmed, the age of the person. Well, you might put in, okay, they're 35. Okay, well, are we sure they're 35? Well, maybe we don't know. Maybe not until later on when they go to court that we actually find out. So, you know, we might have a process in there for just double check that at the time of adding the court record, which I'll get to in a moment. And then, so we've got their age in years. Obviously, well, actually might need to be a float because it might only be 0.5 years if it's only a 6-month-old baby. And yeah, what was the thing? So in date of birth, we might add that in later on. It's just like an optional field, really. But the idea is that later on, we want to be able to create reports, and those reports would then be, okay, well, you know, what are the ages of victims or the ages of, because the same thing, we're going to have ages of the perpetrators and the gender of the perpetrator, and look for patterns. So the point of it being the open domestic violence or the open violence project or whatever is to create a structure that we can query, and anybody can basically query it. So somebody could come along and say, all right, I want to extract some data. I want to run this query. And then, you know, maybe give people a read-only access to the database, give them an insight into, you know, how it works, you know. So that's the ultimate goal, really. So once an incident has started progressing with the police, then instead of just making a huge record with lots of empty fields, because there's a reported incident in the press and then nothing happens, you know, which is, I'm aware that that's quite common. You can have matters. So something that happens in the court or the police system, and you just say, okay, well, which police force is involved? Maybe that should be a database of the police forces. So, you know, maybe later on, maybe foreign key. What's the crime ID? So we then have a classification of crimes. Now, if we're going to do different locales, so different locations around the world, Australia, yep, murder. But in America, it could be homicide. So it could be the title of the crime would be different. And that's why there's crimes and crime groups, because a homicide's a homicide, whether it's called murder or homicide. And then, you know, if we call it filicide, yep, well, you know, we want to have a subgroup which classifies it as that. So there's a couple of different classification criteria here. We then link back to, well, what is the crime ID here? And, you know, there's some investigation we have to do to, maybe we'll put these on the incident as well, or instead. But if you notice, the incident itself has this tag thing, and it could well be that the tag thing is what really leads it. So when somebody chooses, say, infanticide or filicide here, any subsequent matter is immediately populated with the crime of, let's say it's filicide, or let's say it's homicide, because that's just, you know, that's what they call it in the US jurisdiction or whatever. So there's some learning that we have to do about how the legal framework works, but it's not something I really want to get bogged down in, because the main thing is that we're capturing the incidents. I do eventually want to get to the point where we are capturing some data about who gets convicted. And that's why this record has, you know, did they get charged? Did they appear in court? Was it dismissed? Did they get acquitted? Were they found guilty? Maybe there's some other fields here to be found, like, you know, trial by jury or judges, or, you know, whatever. And then what sentence did they get, you know, and is it the units of the sentence, is that in years or in or months, right? So they only got, you know, 6 months for doing something, whatever, you know, maybe we can do a comparison, find sentence disparity, or charge, or, you know, acquittal disparity. That could be very useful. Anyway, so the status of it, you know, where they are on the journey, interviewed, charged, dismissed, and so on. And then a link to any court documents that are out there, or whatever. That might need to be something like an attachment, so you could, you know, add multiple links, but for now, just got the one. And then I explained about that. And then the main idea is that we have, you know, some key bits of information that we're trying to capture the gender. So if you had a real simple thing like this one, woman rams husband in car, attempt to kill, well, it's going in as an incident, which is, you know, a summary, you know, woman rams husband with car, attempted murder or attempt to kill. And then here you've then got some information about the date, the time, the latitude and longitude. So we can plot it on a map, and we can plot it that a woman did a thing to a man on a timeline. So you can actually use this data to create some pretty cool D3 data visualizations, and give people an insight into the fact that, you know, these things do happen sort of a lot more than we're led to believe, right? And and then, you know, have like the tally of how many kids have been killed and that sort of thing, and say, well, if you compare the amount of kids dying with, you know, men hitting women and women hitting men and all that kind of stuff, you know, there's not a gendered problem, you know, let's say. I mean, they should be open to something like this, because if the world is the way they say it is, this will prove it, and all the men's rights people will have to go and hide. But yeah, I think they know. I'm sure they know that it's ideology and bullshit. So anyway, this is the idea. Of course, the important thing is that I have to make it really usable, and anybody can add something very easily that doesn't go live. So yeah, so basically it's like the status will have to be controlled. So when it's first made, it will be like pending, and then reviewed, and then published. And there'll be like stages before it actually goes live, to ensure that, you know, only the stuff that we're confident about actually gets into the reports. And if there's a hole in the data, of course, that's gonna hurt us. But what we want to do is be as thorough as possible, and really just keep a, you know, have a the idea of crowdsourcing, right, is that there's a whole army of people out there trying to find articles, and then they're the one to post it. So that was another thing, is maybe some sort of reward or recognition for posting articles and saying, well, you know, who is it posted by? And this links to the user ID. Yeah, so whoever comes up with something like that gets a sort of a recognition, and then maybe not gamification, but some kind of, you know, profile that, you know, badge of honor that they've been the one to kind of moderate, or they've been the one to check and submit X number of things over a certain time period. So people get, you know, they get some kudos for having done a good thing. And that's the idea. So yeah, I'm interested to know from a few people I'm going to send this video to. Firstly, do you see any holes in the data structure? Do you see any issues with how we capture the data? And, you know, does anything sort of jump out at you in terms of the crowdsourcing / usability aspect? I think, you know, my skills of kind of my experience with building websites, you know, I think, you know, we're going to try and set the bar quite low to make it as easy as possible. And I think we've got a good team to kind of do that. There's me and one of my developers, and then somebody on my team, well, actually my partner, she's interested in helping too. So it's really about, you know, what are your ideas? Just give me whatever you've got, and I'll see what I can do. Okay, thank you.